Some people move through the world like a fading outline close enough to touch, yet always slightly out of reach. They learned early that quietness could protect them, that shrinking themselves made the room softer, that stillness kept the peace. As a child, they watched the emotional weather around them and understood something no child should. Being noticed could hurt, and being ignored could feel safer. So they mastered invisibility. Years passed, but the instinct stayed. In conversations, in relationships, in dreams, they keep tucked away. They want connection, yet their body remembers a different rule. Stay small to stay safe. And the echo of that unseen child still shapes every step they take. It begins quietly, not with a dramatic moment, not with a single wound, but with a series of small, almost invisible impressions that settle inside a child before they understand what the world expects of them. A slammed door, a sharp breath from a parent who is overwhelmed, a voice raised not at them, but near them, the heaviness of a room where emotions move faster than explanations. And the child watches. Their eyes learn before their mind does. They sense tension the way others sense weather, noticing the subtle shifts, the silent storms, the moments when the air changes shape. They begin to understand something unspoken. When they speak, the room tightens. When they vanish, it softens, and so they experiment with quietness. They test the safety found in silence. They learn how stillness can protect them in ways words cannot. Visibility, they discover, is unpredictable. Attention can turn sharp. Noise can draw focus. Being noticed can feel like stepping into a spotlight that burns instead of warms. And so a small decision begins to grow inside them, one that doesn't feel like a decision at all. To be safe, they must be small, not physically, but emotionally. Small in presence, small in demands, small in the way they take up space, shaping their existence around the edges of the people who are supposed to guide them. They learn to sit quietly in corners during family gatherings. They learn to read the room before entering it, scanning for danger the way others look for welcome. They become careful with laughter, careful with questions, careful with the soft, natural impulse to be expressive. They tuck pieces of themselves away not because they want to, but because the environment trains them to. Some children disappear because they are ignored, others because they are too visible. But the child who learns to stay invisible often lives in the thin, fragile space between both extremes, noticed for the wrong reasons, overlooked for the moments that mattered. They become the child who doesn't interrupt, the child who doesn't cry loudly, the child who becomes unusually good at entertaining themselves. Their teachers describe them as easy. Friends call them quiet. Adults praise their independence, unaware that the child has simply adapted to a world where their needs feel like burdens. At night, they lie awake and listen to the house settle. They learn the rhythms of footsteps, the volume of their parents' conversations, the difference between silence that means peace and silence that means fear. Their nervous system adjusts, becoming finely tuned to every subtle shift. And slowly, their identity forms around this vigilance. They aren't trying to hide, they are trying to survive. They don't even understand that disappearing is a form of self-protection. To them, it feels natural, automatic, necessary. They grow into a child who gives others the comfort they need, even if it costs them their own. A child who feels responsible for the emotional temperature around them. A child who mistakes invisibility for emotional maturity. Over time, the pattern deepens. They smile to disguise discomfort. They nod instead of contradicting. They learn to soften their voice, or hold their breath, or let their opinions dissolve in the presence of stronger ones. They sense conflict before it begins. They disappear before they are asked to. And because no one questions this quietness, because it makes life easier for the people around them, he goes unnoticed, unchallenged, unnamed. The birth of smallness rarely looks dramatic from the outside. It looks like good behavior. It looks like compliance. It looks like a calm child who never causes trouble. But inside, a different story unfolds. The beginning of a lifelong echo, a quiet, internal whisper that says, "Stay small, stay silent, stay safe." And the child listens, because at that age, they believe safety is earned through erasure. They do not know that the world will one day ask them to be visible. They only know that disappearing once kept them alive. Before a child learns to disappear, something in their world teaches them that presence is risky. Not always through harshness. Sometimes through absence. Sometimes through a parent's emotional exhaustion. Sometimes through chaos that has nothing to do with the child, yet still shapes them quietly, like water shaping stone. In many homes, the wounds are subtle. A parent who is physically present but emotionally unreachable. A caregiver who loves deeply but carries their own storms, leaving no room for another set of feelings. Or an environment where the adult's needs take priority, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. And the child, sensitive and perceptive, steps into the silence. They begin to notice patterns. A raised voice after a small mistake. A cold distance after asking a question at the wrong time. A sense that their feelings are too much, their needs inconvenient. Their presence something to be managed rather than welcomed. They do not rebel. They adapt. Children always adapt. When love feels conditional, they reshape themselves to keep whatever love remains. When attention leads to conflict, they step away from the spotlight. When needs go unanswered, they tuck them inside, telling themselves they didn't need help anyway. Invisibility begins in these quiet compromises. In these moments where the child decides without even knowing they are deciding, that the safest thing they can be is unnoticed. Some come from homes filled with unpredictability, doors closing too hard, tempers changing too quickly, emotions shifting without warning. Others come from homes where stability exists, but intimacy does not. Polite conversations, structured routines, an orderly life, but an emotional emptiness that leaves the child unsure of where they fit. In both cases, the child learns the same lesson. Being small is easier for everyone. They blend into the background because blending feels safer than expressing. They take on responsibilities too heavy for their age, comforting a parent, managing the energy of a room, absorbing tension that isn't theirs. They become the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who anticipates what others need before anyone asks. Adults praise this as maturity, but it is not maturity, is survival disguised as composure. And beneath that composure is a soft, persistent ache, a longing to be held, to be understood, to be seen in a way that doesn't require shrinking. But longing is dangerous in a home where needs go unmet, so they bury it. Their emotional world becomes an internal, private landscape. They grow skilled at reading faces, monitoring tones of voice, scanning for early signs of conflict or disappointment. Their nervous system remains on alert, not because they expect danger, but because they learned that unpredictability hides in small moments. Every child interprets their world through the lens of their caregivers. If a parent is overwhelmed, the child may think, "I must not add more." If a parent is distant, the child may think, "I must not need too much." If a parent is volatile, the child may think, "I must not provoke anything." These beliefs take root quietly. They grow into the unspoken rules that guide the child's behavior for years to come. Stay quiet. Stay agreeable. Stay invisible when the world feels unstable. And although the child cannot articulate it, their body understands it deeply. Their posture softens. Their voice quiets. Their steps become light. They apologize to They hold their breath during tense moments, waiting for the emotional weather to pass. The home may not look dysfunctional from the outside. Sometimes it looks perfectly ordinary. But invisibility doesn't require chaos. It only requires inconsistency. A child needs predictable, safe responses to learn that their presence is welcome. Without that, they begin to erase themselves, piece by piece. And the people around them rarely notice it happening. Because the child's disappearance makes the environment easier, quieter, more manageable. They become the child who doesn't bother anyone. The child who doesn't complain. The child who never needs anything, but they do need things. They simply learned that asking comes with a cost. And so, invisibility becomes their refuge, their armor, their shelter, and eventually, without meaning to, it becomes their identity. A child who learns to stay invisible does not simply choose silence, their body chooses it for them. Their nervous system creates a blueprint for survival, long before they can name what they feel. The instinct to disappear becomes wired into the very structure of their emotional world. At first, the child notices tension in ordinary moments. A heavy sigh from a parent, a sudden shift in tone, a subtle disappointment that flickers across a face. These moments accumulate inside them, forming a quiet internal alarm system. The child begins scanning for danger before danger arrives. Hypervigilance becomes second nature. Their senses sharpen. Their attention narrows. They learn to read the room faster than they learn to read themselves. As the brain adapts to this constant scanning, it begins to favor the path of least resistance, the smallest version of the self. The psychological pattern known as fawning emerges, not as manipulation, but as instinct. The child soothes, agrees, softens, minimizes. They become gentle, even when they are hurting. They become agreeable, even when something feels wrong. Not because they lack opinions, but because expressing those opinions once felt unsafe. And the brain remembers. The brain always remembers. Over time, these protective behaviors shape the child's identity. They become someone who prioritizes harmony over honesty, peace over expression, invisibility over need. This hidden self grows quietly. It develops a sophisticated emotional radar, able to sense subtle shifts in others long before others notice themselves. It becomes skilled at anticipating reactions, adjusting its presence accordingly. But in this careful attunement to everyone else, the hidden self loses sight of its own emotional signals. The child becomes fluent in others and foreign to themselves. Attachment theory explains parts of this pattern. A child whose caregiver is inconsistent warm sometimes, distant other times, learns that emotional connection cannot be trusted. Love becomes unpredictable. Attention becomes unstable. And so the child adapts by becoming someone who demands nothing, someone who stays out of the way, someone who protects the relationship by minimizing their own needs. To outsiders, this child may seem resilient or mature, but inside, the psychological cost grows. Emotional suppression becomes a daily ritual. When sadness appears, they hide it. When anger rises, they swallow it. When joy sparks, they dim it, so it doesn't look like too much. Every feeling is filtered through the question, will this make things worse? And if the answer is yes, as it often has been, the emotion is tucked away in the unseen places of the mind. This internal storage becomes heavy, but the child carries it quietly. They learn to offer comfort instead of asking for it. They learn to listen instead of speaking. They learn to observe instead of participating. Yet beneath all this quietness lies a paradox. Invisibility protects them, but it also isolates them. They grow into an adult who can sense others deeply but struggles to understand the movements of their own heart. An adult who avoids conflict, not because they fear anger, but because they fear being the cause of it. An adult who longs for connection but feels undeserving of attention. The hidden self remains guarded, unsure if being truly seen is safe. Even in peaceful environments, the body reacts to old patterns. A raised voice still tightens the chest. A disappointed expression still sparks anxiety. Attention still feels like exposure. Praise still feels confusing. Love still feels overwhelming. The psychology behind this is simple. The brain prefers the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. And invisibility is familiar. It is predictable. It is safe even when it hurts. The hidden self is not weak. It is adaptive. It protected the child through years of uncertainty. But as the world changes, the old blueprint remains, shaping behaviors long after the environment has become safer. This is the quiet truth. A person who grew up invisible does not know how to stop disappearing, because the disappearance is not behavior, it is memory. It is protection. It is the child inside them, still whispering the rules that once kept them safe. By the time the child becomes an adult, invisibility has woven itself into their relationships, their decisions, their sense of self. It shows up in places others rarely notice. In the way they hesitate before speaking, in the way they downplay their accomplishments, in the way they apologize for taking up space they are fully entitled to. The instinct follows them quietly, shaping their life with the same subtlety it once shaped their childhood. In friendships, they are the dependable one, the listener, the safe person others confide in. They hold space for everyone's stories, yet rarely offer their own. When others ask how they are, they answer gently, carefully, leaving out the parts that feel too heavy or too vulnerable. They fear burdening people, even those who genuinely care, and so intimacy forms around them, but not within them. In love, the pattern deepens. The fear of visibility becomes a fear of vulnerability. They struggle to be fully known, not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness feels like exposure. They worry that if someone sees the parts they hide, the need, the longing, the quiet ache, they will become too much. And so they offer softness instead of honesty, support instead of expression, understanding instead of need. Their partners may sense a distance they cannot explain, a gentle withdrawal, a softness that feels like a shield. The adult, who learned to be invisible, loves deeply, but quietly. They love without taking. They love without asking. They love without believing they deserve to be loved back in the same way. In work or ambition, invisibility becomes a quiet limitation. They defer. They understate their skills. They step back from recognition because recognition feels overwhelming. Praise feels like pressure. Opportunities feel like exposure. They become the person who works hard behind the scenes, rarely advocating for themselves, often overlooked, not because they lack ability, but because they do not know how to stand where others can see them. When conflict arises, their body reacts with the old childhood fear. Their voice tightens. Their thoughts scatter. They want to defend themselves, but the instinct to maintain peace overrides everything. They agree to things they don't want. They apologize when they're not at fault. They retreat to keep the ground steady. Their boundaries dissolve before conflict can reach them. And afterward, they wonder why they feel invisible even in their own life. Beneath all of this is a quiet internal struggle, a longing to be seen fighting against a fear of exposure. Two opposing truths living in the same heart. They want to be understood, but understanding requires visibility. They want connection, but connection requires openness. They want to be valued, but valuing themselves feels unnatural. They live in this tug-of-war, moving closer to people and then pulling back. Wanting closeness but fearing the very thing that might heal them. Loneliness grows in the spaces they leave empty. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of being emotionally unseen. They can be surrounded by people and still feel like a ghost. They can be loved and still feel unknown. They can be admired and still feel small. And yet, they continue minimizing themselves because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. The patterns of childhood become the reflexes of adulthood. When someone finally notices their quietness, they struggle to explain it. How do you describe a habit built before you had language? How do you articulate an instinct that feels like breathing? They often say they are just quiet, or just private, or just reflective. But beneath those words lies a deeper truth. They learned long ago that disappearing was easier than being hurt. And the adult they've become still carries that lesson, even when the world no longer demands their silence. This is the quiet conflict of the adult who remains invisible. They want to step forward, but their past keeps pulling them back into the shadows, not because they are weak, but because they were never taught another way to exist. Healing does not arrive as a single moment of clarity. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. In the small ways, a person starts noticing themselves again. It begins when the adult who has spent years staying invisible realizes that something inside them is tired. Tired of shrinking. Tired of apologizing. Tired of living as a softened version of who they truly are. Healing starts with awareness, and awareness often comes as a gentle discomfort. A whisper that says, "This isn't who you were meant to be." At first, the whisper feels unfamiliar, almost intrusive, but with time, it becomes a companion, a quiet truth asking to be acknowledged. The work of healing is not about becoming louder. It is not about transforming into someone bold or fearless. It is about learning to become present within your own life again, to step back into your own body, to re-enter your own story. It begins with small acts of visibility, saying what you really feel, even if it trembles, taking a moment to breathe before automatically agreeing, allowing yourself to take up 1 inch more space than you usually do. These gestures seem insignificant, but for someone who has lived in the shadows, they are monumental. Slowly, they begin to feel the weight of their own existence. Not as a burden, but as something grounded, steady, real. Healing asks the person to turn inward, to explore the parts of themselves they once hid. The hurt child who learned silence. The adolescent who mistook invisibility for protection. The adult who continued carrying the old survival patterns long after the threat was gone. These versions of the self are not mistakes. They are not weaknesses. They are evidence of adaptation, proof of someone who learned to survive with limited emotional oxygen. Healing is not about correcting these old selves. It is about honoring them, understanding them, and gently guiding them toward a new way of being. At this stage, the body begins to unlearn its old reflexes. The racing heart during conflict starts to slow. The instinct to disappear becomes easier to notice before it fully takes over. The person begins to recognize that discomfort does not always mean danger. That being seen does not always lead to harm. That taking up emotional space is not the same as causing trouble. Another layer of healing emerges in relationships. They start to practice being known, even in small ways. Allowing a friend to see their tiredness, letting a partner hear the truth behind a soft smile, admitting when something hurts, expressing a need without apology. These moments feel vulnerable, almost alarming, because they disrupt the old rhythm of invisibility. But each moment expands the internal world just a little more. Each moment teaches the nervous system that visibility can coexist with safety. Healing also involves reclaiming the self that was postponed, the ambition that was softened, the voice that was muted, the boundaries that never had the chance to fully form. They begin to realize that asserting themselves is not aggression, it is self-preservation. That saying no is not rejection, it is clarity. That expressing a need does not make them difficult, it makes them human. Over time, they begin to understand something essential. Their presence was never the problem. The environment that taught them to disappear was. The shame that once attached itself to their existence begins to loosen. Not suddenly, but gradually, like a thread unraveling, releasing them from patterns that no longer serve their life. Healing doesn't erase the past. It integrates it. It transforms invisibility from an unconscious reflex into an outdated habit, one that no longer holds power over them. The person learns to see themselves with the gentleness they once reserved only for others. They learn that their presence has weight and meaning, that they are allowed to exist fully, not partially. And perhaps the most profound shift is this. The fear of being seen becomes intertwined with the desire to be known. Not perfectly, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, in ways that feel real. And in that slow return to themselves, they discover a truth they never learned in childhood. Visibility is not a danger. It is a homecoming.